Good luck.
Welcome to Beyond Trauma-Informed Strategies, a model for supporting the emotional development of teachers and their students. My name is Melissa Adamchik. I'm Executive Director of the Tri-State Trauma Network, and I'm joined today with my co-presenter, Timothy Nolan, consultant for High Schools That Work, Southwest Ohio. Thank you for being here with us. This work represents a wonderful collaboration between the Tri-State Trauma Network and High Schools That Work, Southwest Ohio. And we have a couple of quotes that speak to our feeling about collaboration, and I'll let Tim start with his.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for being here today. I always used to say, none of us is as smart as all of us, but Yoda would say, as smart as all of us, none of us is.
All right, thank you. And my favorite collaboration quote is, when enough webs of the spider join, they can trap a lion. And I borrowed that one from Janina Fisher, but it is an Ethiopian proverb. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our agencies first, and I will talk about the Tri-State Trauma Network, of course. We have been around since May of 2015, so we're on our 7-year anniversary this month. The mission of the Tri-State Trauma Network, and really the reason why we were formed, was to address the trauma and toxic stress in our community. And so the goal was to create a community-wide commitment to preventing and then helping people recover from trauma and toxic stress. And we do that in a lot of different ways. Our main way is really through offering high quality training to a variety of professionals, not just those in mental health. We include teachers, we include lawyers, and we include lots of people doing different supportive work in the field of social services and education. We also attempt to foster collaboration between agencies and systems, because that is the only way to truly develop a trauma-informed and responsive system of care. And we like to be a clearinghouse for information and resources related to trauma and toxic stress. And we have recently decided to divide our resources into those more geared towards professionals versus those more geared towards consumers of trauma-informed services. So you'll see on our website that we've got 2 different types of resources to access. All of this speaks to our vision for the community at Tri-State Trauma Network, which is that all trauma survivors receive the care they need to heal and thrive. So where are we now? I mentioned that we started 7 years ago. Here in 2022, we have now trained more than 4,500 people in trauma and trauma-informed approaches. We have over 350 professionals certified in trauma responsive care. That is a collaboration with Finding Hope Consulting. We have had 32 tri-state agencies participate in one of our local trauma-informed care learning communities over about 4 years. And we did this in partnership with the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, formerly the National Council for Behavioral Health. We currently have more than 200 members. Some are agencies, some are individual professionals, and we value each of our members for the role that they play in creating trauma-informed systems of care and influencing change in our community. And I mentioned our resources, and one of the more recent resources that we have available is our own list of therapists in our network specializing in trauma treatment. I'm going to let Tim take over now.
Thank you, Melissa. And I was so pleased to be certified as a trauma responsive care specialist through the training with TTN, and I do serve on the board. But more importantly, in terms of High Schools That Work, Southwest Ohio, we are one of the 4 regions in the state who are designed to serve our schools. We have 120 schools in our district of Southwest, and We specialize in professional development thanks to our executive director, Linda Ratke, who made it a hallmark of our region to offer high quality professional development to serve our schools. As a national focus, we are part of the Southern Regional Education Board in Atlanta, Georgia, and the mission of High Schools at Work in general is to improve or maximize academics so the kids or students can be ready for both college and career. And we do this by 10 key practices. The ones that we'll be focusing on today as part of this model that we're sharing with you are teachers working together and especially students actively engaged. Why? So that we can improve, finally, the culture of continuous improvement. Bottom line, we just truly try to serve the needs of the teacher. We know that the teacher is the most essential part of the learning process. And if we can be transformative in any way to make teachers more satisfied, more competent, and especially, I think, just feeling better about who they are and their profession, we consider ourselves achieving our goal.
Thank you, Tim. So the question becomes, why are we focusing on what I like to call co-emotional development, which is a term I made up based on the notion of co-regulation that occurs between adults and children. Research has shown us that one caring adult in a child's life is a key factor in the child's resilience. It can make all the difference in the world. We also know that resilient teachers are better able to support and teach their students. And we know that emotional resilience plays a critical role in the students' not only academic life, but also their regular general moving forward life and growth.
All right, and so now we switch to why. Why do we have this project? Why can we justify designing this process? Well, it's an incredible need. I don't think anyone could argue that the mental health symptoms for many of our children are at an all-time high. Just look at every article, look at every newspaper, whatever journal, look in your schools, and you'll see that, as well as teachers. And so consequently, what I'm really concerned about is teacher burnout and fatigue. I see it in the workshops that I have done and try to do. Just today in the Cincinnati Enquirer, they quoted the ODE report at the bottom of your screen there, showing that there was a 250% increase in resignations from the teaching profession, not retirements, resignations from just 4 years. And according to other national sources, they're looking at a 40% attrition rate for teachers nationally. That is frightening, to say the least.
So some more about the needs for our children and teachers. We know that unfortunately, many children do suffer from a lack of developmentally appropriate social and emotional skills based on experiences that they have had at younger ages and might continue to have throughout childhood. So that was going on already in our culture. But then we had the pandemic, which really amplified this effect because children were more isolated, had less opportunities to interact and develop relationships in which social and emotional skills are able to grow. I was alarmed to find out that 250,000 school-age children have lost a parent or caregiver during this pandemic. That is such a major hit to a child's development and to the way they view the world. We know that some children don't have access to caring adults who can do the right sort of social and emotional teaching and support. And we also understand that social and emotional skill sets of teachers themselves are central to them being able to teach in the classroom and be able to enhance the social emotional skills of their students. And so this is not to say that teachers don't have these social and emotional skill sets by any stretch of the imagination, but we all know that under stress, our ability to perform the things that we know, and our ability to use the higher level skills are impacted in a negative way.
So
Our,
here's a help. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
our notion and the philosophy behind these workshops and this curriculum is that if we build the social and emotional and trauma responsive skills of teachers, we can assist them in building those essential relationships that lead to better social and emotional skills, but also the relationship allows for the scaffolding of those skills from the teacher to the child.
So here's a helpful home remodeling tip. Stop painting your bedroom when your kitchen is on fire, for crying out loud. And let's take a moment of truth here, a true reflective moment. We're always reacting, and I'm hoping that this project that we have developed is more transformative than reactive. But bottom line, the key is there a fire in your school? And I think whether it's in a classroom or broad-based, that's the issue that we have to address truly. So based on that, we have given a lot of thought and taken a lot of resources and put it together into the 6 workshops that you can take individually, teachers or teams or schools, which we have done, and or take the series, which is connected and does follow the systemic process from self-awareness through responsible decision-making. And you can read those for yourself, and follows what we call the stages of concern, that SOC. Now, the stages of concern, I ran into in 1975 from Gene Hall at the University of Texas. And it was an interesting way for me to design professional development. And I've been trying to do that ever since. And so basically, for instance, if I said to you neuro-linguistic programming, well, if you have no idea about that, you approach that neutrally. You're not for it, you're not against it, you have no opinion about it whatsoever. That might generate and should cause you to think, well, what is it? Which is the next level information. And that then powers you to gain knowledge about it. So we follow that process. But the key element here is, after you get the knowledge, let's say of neuro-linguistic programming or trauma-informed care, then you have to internalize it. And you have to say, why me? Should I do this? You all have binders on your shelves with the latest or old time, though this is the newest thing in education, and you put it on the shelf because you didn't say, why me? You said, have somebody else do it. But then after you really think about it, you go into the how, and that's the management, and those are the skill levels, so those are the implementation levels. And as a quality teacher, dedicated person, you think, how's this going to impact my teaching? But more importantly, how's this going to impact my students and the overall school? And then you need to collaborate in order to work together. That's why so many of you have teams. And finally, you come to adjust or change the change so that it becomes your own and you own it. And then once you own it, you have then adopted the innovation according to Gene Hall. So where are you in stage model of trauma-informed care or working with your community? So that's why we designed these 6 workshops in this process using Gene Hall's model, and also the whole concept of from self-awareness through responsible decision making. Okay, so if we could pause the whole workshop here in the video, I would ask you to do a mindful reflection, because that is critical. It is so important. I used to run a little program called the 4 M's, my Monday morning moments, during the height of the pandemic, and teachers needed it. Actually, I had more principals show up than teachers. Hooray! What great self-knowledge they had. But if 1 in 5 has a wonderful and free teacher mindfulness exercise that they sponsor through the school year every year, and I can't endorse them enough. They are great partners, and I would encourage you to practice mindfulness, because we begin each of these workshops with mindfulness. So with that in mind, let's go to the modules and look at the very first one. Melissa?
Thank you, Tim. Yes, the mindfulness piece is so helpful because we often come to workshops or to the beginning of our workday or a variety of situations in a more hurried, anxious, rushed state. And so being able to get to a calm place does enhance all of our abilities to learn for adults and children. So first things first, we wanted to make sure that self-care did come first. So that is module 1. And in module 1, we help people to identify the different stressors in their lives and what impact those have on their work-life balance. We help people to learn a little bit about trauma and its impact. And then we have people assess their own professional quality of life. This is using a free tool that you can find online called the ProQual. And there's also an app that you can download to monitor how you're doing with your professional quality of life on a regular basis. And it will even remind you that it's been X number of days since you've had a vacation. And that is really awesome, I think, because if it's been 100 or 300 or 400 days since you've taken a vacation, you know that your cup is full and you need to take some time. So we round out the self-care module by helping people to develop a realistic self-care plan for at least 3 aspects of their personal life. There are many aspects of self-care and many domains in which different things can be implemented. So we give people choices because it's not about anyone telling you what your self-care plan should be. It's about you deciding what are the things that work for you. And so oftentimes that requires thinking a little bit outside the box too. The other thing I want to say about self-care is that we understand the need for self-care, but also the need for employers and communities and systems to shoulder some responsibility for caring for the people doing the work. And we do encourage at Tri-State Trauma Network, as part of a trauma-informed care approach, that agencies are assisting with wellness plans and opportunities.
And as I used to say in my human relations classes that I taught for many years at Cincinnati State Technical and Community College, stop shooting on yourself. You should on yourself more than other people should on you. And I can't stress that enough. And we carry that burden, don't we? So keep that in mind because as we go now into module 2, we have to bring ourselves along. So after we examine the self-care aspect or self-wellness, we look at how you think and how you feel about different things. And that's important. Before we even get to the students or anything, we look at patterns of thinking that interfere with you solving problems effectively. This is more social awareness kinds of thing, but it's self-awareness here. That was, and then it goes into self-management. So self-care was self-awareness, and in the module 2, this is self-management. How do you manage your emotions? How do you manage the information that's pouring through your head every day? Well, let's take a look at some cognitive distortions. One of them is called emotional reasoning. There's others like binary, black and white thinking, and pervasiveness. Oh, I taught that kid's sister, and I bet they're just like that kid, and here she comes again. No. So here we have emotional reasoning, and the challenge is your feelings well up. Hey, let's be honest. When you know one of your beloved students is absent, it makes you kind of have joy in your heart that day because your class will probably be a lot easier to teach because your favorite student is. So here's the point. You say, I'm so upset. Let's say that student walks in. I'm so upset and frustrated now. You thought they were absent, but they're here. But then the emotional reasoning, the whole concept of the cloud is to lift that emotion before you express anything onto the cloud and watch it drift away. So that's one of the concepts of cognitive distortions that we practice and teach during the workshop. More importantly, we look at emotions, okay? And we all know that there are 6 stages of emotion from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And let's talk about your favorite student showing up in that prompting event. You go, oh, and they walk in and go, you look nice today. And do you hear, you look nice today? Or do you hear, you look nice today? That immediately you interpret the sound of that student's voice or body language or just the words, and that creates a physical response. If it's a nice response, you'll get a dopamine flush and go, oh, this, or if it's, you look nice today, and it triggers cortisol and anger, and your hormones are raging, and your brain starts going into threat, fear, then you have the impulse to act, that urge to act. And then here's the key. We're going to teach later, especially, how to bridge the urge to act to the action, because time is a variable. And then the action automatically leads to an after effect, either dealing with the student, good, bad, or ugly. And we've all been there. So let's take a brief reflection about time is the difference, okay? The difference between a reaction or a response, that is critical. And it's so important. That's where mindfulness comes in, really. We're reactive when, bam, you're triggered. You're triggered. Just whatever it is that student knows how to get you, okay? If that's disrespectful with that remark, you look nice today, or you look nice today, then that's reactive if you immediately say something back, like, well, you look great too. No. Time, mindfulness, deep breathing, take a breath, use that cloud, put it up there. Respond is the difference. The difference between a reaction or a response is time. So be in charge of your time. Control your time as much as you can, because your focus is to help students build their own self-regulation, and you must model that self-regulation by de-escalating your own feeling, so before you even start trying to de-escalate anybody else's. So on to module 3.
Thanks, Tim. And that's a great point there. So in module 3, we cover the language of trauma, and we also touch on safety and attachment, which are of key importance to students being able to learn and function, as well as teachers. Everybody has a need to feel safe in their environment and in their own mind. So the objectives in module 3 are about understanding and appreciating the impact of trauma on the brain functions and behavior. So giving that trauma the place that it needs to be given in interpreting behavior. To look at the lens of fear that we may bring to student behavior and academic achievement. There is a great exercise called Who's Driving Your Bus? And it really looks at what are some things that you may be afraid of. Perhaps you're afraid of the way a student might react towards you and disrupt the class. Perhaps you're just afraid of being able to talk to teachers in a positive and collaborative fashion with parents, because they also come with their own fear and emotions. We get into identifying the 4 phases of the Flip It model, and FLIP stands for feelings, limits, inquiries, and prompts. This is a great model that was developed by Rachel Sperry of the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children, and I had the good fortune of being trained directly by her back in 2013. And this model is super helpful and simple. And then the last thing we want to do in this module is to help you all cope with disruptive behavior using the Reflect, Honor, Connect strategy. And this was developed by a friend of ours, Mary Vicario with Finding Hope Consulting. And let me bring that slide up. So a little more on Reflect, Honor, Connect. And if you want to really dig into this, I encourage you to come to one of Mary's trainings. She covers this quite regularly, including during our trauma responsive care certification series, but also in many other types of trainings that she provides in our region. So when we look at reflect, honor, connect, we're talking about reflecting back with compassion what the person has said to you, whether it's words or feelings or both. And what that does is to assure the person that they've been heard. And that is so powerful. Nobody likes to express something and then feel as if they were not heard. Honor speaks to honoring what the person did to survive and to adapt to that situation. And so, what is that person doing to get their needs met? What did they do then to get their needs met? And saying, yes, that is something that you needed to do. And maybe that's something that you're still continuing to do as well, because you had to do that in order to survive and get your needs met under certain circumstances. So we empower them with the honor piece. And then finally, there's connect. And connect is about connecting the person to safe, positive adults, and also connecting them to a positive future orientation. Some of what people lose during a traumatic experience or a very adverse experience is their connection to hope and their connection to other people. It can be very isolating. And so when we employ this strategy, we really put people in a much better place so that they can use different types of strategies, and we can help them use different types of strategies to get their needs met. Okay, moving on to module 4. This is all about relationships. And as I said earlier, relationships are key for building social and emotional skills. Everything that a child learns happens within a relationship. This is what moves them forward in terms of development. So what are the things that we're covering there? Well, the Search Institute has developed these great developmental skills. There are 20 of them. And you've probably seen these because they've been around for quite some time. Then we also have underneath that the 5 major components of the developmental skills framework. And we're going to pull up that image in just a moment to be able to talk through that a little bit more. And then a third concept, which is really important in relationships, is the 5 love languages. And that was developed by Gary Chapman. And so being able to identify in yourself what you like to do as a love language and what you like to receive as a love language is very important. And there's no right or wrongs on that. It's just what speaks to you the most and what feels the best to you. And so being able to talk about those things, understand those things, and let other people know those things really makes a huge difference in terms of any type of relationship. It's not just a love relationship, it's a friendship, it's a collegial relationship, it's a co-working relationship, it's a just human to human relationship. It can be very, very helpful.
While Melissa's pulling up the Search Institute's 5 major components of relationships, I did want to highlight for you the book by Chapman, the love language. One of them is like words of affirmation. I mean, it's just, that's how some people, tell you that they care for you. Other people have to show you. Other people have to give gifts. Time is one of the greatest gifts. So those are key points of Chapman's book that also can be reflected on in terms of how do you build your language with the students in your class and give them voice.
So here we go with the developmental relationships framework. And Tim, I'm going to have you move through that with that great example that you have in relationship to teachers and students.
Well, the key is, the whole concept is that if you can't express care and show them that they matter, each kid matters, and to be open and compassionate, and the greatest gift you can give anyone is listening, So if a kid's having a rough day and it, it's hard to express that care, but just by greeting them and pre-establishing those relationships, they believe in you because you've created this relationship with them. And then you can challenge them to growth. That's where your teaching comes in, and we expect you to do this. You can't just go off the bat, remember when we were in college and everyone said, look to your left, look to your right, these people will be gone by the semester. Well, that's welcoming, isn't it? And then there you're challenging them to succeed, or not grow, but to fail. Because if you sat there and said, oh gosh, I'll be gone, you probably were. If you sat there in your class and said, well, I'm going to be here, you probably were. But that came from your own internal focus, not being in part of this. So the teacher challenges you to grow, and then you provide that support. That's where you bring in resources, you bring in your team, you guide them and empower them, and you give them voice because you're sharing the power with them because you respect them. And they know that. And because they know you respect them, they take you seriously, and then they'll take chances because then they'll try to connect outside of your classroom. This is beyond project-based instruction. This is expanding the possibilities, and that's where you actually inspire people. If you've been to enough reunions of your graduates, you know that something you said inadvertently changed their life, and you couldn't believe that. You don't even remember saying it, but they do. And that's the only thing that matters. They connect it with you, and that's the beauty of a relationship.
Thank you so much, Tim.
You're welcome. All right, now we're almost halfway through our little video, so what I'd like to do is offer Module 5 in the restorative practice. And this is a difficult one because so many schools are all over the place. For instance, Finneytown sent the whole administrative staff to be trained by the International Institute for Reflective Practices. So they came back empowered after their intense workshop. Northwest local schools, which is Coleraine and Northwest High School and all their schools, they trained the whole district on this. And so they started there. That's how they built their culture in their community. So it varies so much in this module where you even start. In some places, we don't even do this because Northwest could actually and should run these workshops themselves. But basically, we're teaching responsible decision making and using affective questions to deal with behaviors, and you have to assess, and this is where you bring it on home, where you assess the school policies and procedures. Look at your student handbook. Read the student handbook. You'll be surprised. Cell phones, aren't they fun? But seriously, you have to examine your PBIS system. We'll get into and there's no better site as the pbisworld.com site that we'll be looking at later. But here's the scene. You're creating an environment. You're creating a simple environment. And when a flower doesn't bloom, do you fix the environment or the flower? And the point is, school climate, school culture is essential. And that's the reason we really have to look at PBIS World. PBIS World, or Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, work at 3 levels. You know this, but I really encourage you. If there's one thing you want to do, please do pbisworld.com. It opens up and you click on a behavior that drives you crazy. One of your triggers, that disrespectful student, click on that. Or the student is always late or never turns in work or whatever it is, whatever your triggers are, it gives you 24 different student behaviors. And then you click on that and it'll show you your tier 1 responses in a trauma-informed way to deal with those. Because you want to keep your problems in your classroom and solve them in your classroom so that we don't have to go to tier 2 or 3. In his new book, which is a fantastic book called The Excellent Teaching, Excellent Teaching, and it's by Keith Matheny. He talks about these tiers and asks you how you would like to swim or teach swimming. And I think this is a fascinating analogy. And that's Coach Rudy, called Keith Matheny. And in his book, which just was published, he says, would you rather teach swimming or to learn to swim in a calm lagoon? How about a raging river with some rapids? Or hey, tier 3, top of a waterfall? I don't think so. So I love the tier concept of his book because it really does tell you, let's all try to stay in the lagoon, in the calmness, and try to teach each other and learn from each other how not just to swim, but how to learn. So that kind of brings us to the pinnacle of all this, which leads to creating a trauma sensitive classroom. And I learned so much from the Tri-State Trauma Network's training on dealing with these kinds of aspects. And another person who I have known for quite a few years is Christian Sowers, who wrote the book Fostering Resilient Learners. Oh, and then even better, because I asked the excuse me, I asked the teachers or educators in the training to at least get the quick reference guide that Christian Sowers has put together through ASCD on the 12 strategies. And we align the strategies and we say, what two are you using now? And what two would you like to use? And then we try to manage that to create an action plan. So let's drill down a little bit into, she talks about 4 big ideas. I love this. There's the self-awareness, the relationships, again, going back to Melissa's concept there, the beliefs, and live, laugh, love. I think the belief system, going back to cognitive distortion and emotional management, one of them is, as Melissa mentioned earlier, don't let fear drive your bus. Don't let fear drive your bus. Who is in charge? So we usually give that inventory, with her permission, to the teachers, and then we have them reflect on, what are you afraid of? Fear is a huge motivator, and it can be helpful or it can be tremendously hurtful. Shame is the worst emotion you can ever share on or give to a student. It's so destructive. So what are your emotions? Then I love the other one. She talks about live, laugh, show grace. Show grace versus blame. If you can learn to show grace and not shame a student, you're going to have so many different environments in your classroom that you'll be amazed. So think about, what are the strategies of a trauma sensitive classroom, because that's what we're shooting for. That's our goal. It'll make your life so much easier and you'll enjoy every day. But you know what? We're all in the same storm, but oh, are we in different boats? And that's kind of sad, because it's not a panacea. One size doesn't fit all. We all have to cope and learn on our own. But remember, none of us is as smart as all of us. So we maybe put our boats together, okay? But what happens is then we resolve all of these issues into an action plan. So how are we going to create that trauma sensitive? And this is an action planner that High Schools at Work uses for all of its schools upon finishing their site review, which they run 3 to 5 years. And we create the action steps, the successes, and who's going to do it and when you expect it. So it's a typical SMART goal process. And I think that those are the kind of things that we look at. Now, how are we doing in this? Where are we going with this? How many schools have really taken advantage of this? Okay, well, there are 20 schools right now who are in different phases or stages of this process. Some of them just selected one project. That's fine, like Carlisle High School. That's fine. Others, like Northeastern, the media specialist there, she created a book club where they're doing emotional resilience reading from the Onward book by Elena Aguilera. But the most important one that I know has finished all of the training is the Bethel Tate School District, especially the Bethel Tate Middle School. So let's take a look at the quantitative and qualitative data from Bethel Tate. Does this work? Well, calming rooms, we'll talk about that later. They're wonderful. And they set one up, and there were 11 kids who needed the calming room. And they came 41 times. Now there's 40 kids using the calming room, and they don't need it as much because they're getting the resources of the 70 visit. Some kids even come to the calming room before school starts because they need to calm down and they know it. That's tremendous self-awareness. Also, look at their after-school detentions from 212 to 48. I mean, that's incredible. And they're trying to do away totally with in-school suspensions. What a waste of time for everybody, let alone the moderator. 61 to 2. So that is so so wonderful. Now, the Ree Reynolds, who is the counselor there, Dr. Davis is the principal, and they have a great PBIS team. And Ree Reynolds uses what they used to call it the Orbit survey. Now it's called SO-EMO. They just came out with this. And this measures a student. So a student comes in every day at Bethel Tate Middle School and immediately gets on the computer and answers 2, 3, 4 questions. You can see the screen there. And this is, it can be used at any school, but Ree has it sent to them. So do you want to see a counselor is one of the questions, or how are you feeling? And built into this software are the trigger words. And if there's any trigger word about, a fight or worried or really upset or something, Ree gets a message so that she can see that child before they leave school. I think that's incredible. And you can shape this software to serve anything that you want. But that's the reason the stress levels that you saw on the former screen have dropped so significantly just this year. Just this year. And they were even doing in April state testing, and look at the drop. So there's these gauges of how the kids feeling. Where are their stress levels? How are they rising and falling? So that's what we look at, the qualitative data. I know it's been all over the place because of the pandemic, but we just wanted to take a snapshot for you. Melissa, how about the qualitative outcomes?
That's just, I love these outcomes that Bethel Tate Middle School has had. It's just so wonderful to see the work translate into those numbers.
Well, and Melissa also did the flip model with the elementary school and intermediate school teachers. And I think that really helped too. I thought that was because these kids have to learn and they're moving on. So those kids at intermediate school came to the middle school with those skills.
Yeah, it was great for them to all get on board with that program and that way of reacting and intervening with students, and to see them be able to support each other through that process too, since everyone was trained. So some of the qualitative outcomes, and these are not just for Bethel Tate Middle, these are for a lot of different schools that have participated in some of the modules, some or all of the modules that we've presented today. One principal in particular said, and this is huge and groundbreaking, I used to go home and complain about dealing with students' behaviors all day. Now I can go home and enjoy my family. I mean, isn't that what we all want in life, no matter what our job is? And then this, the calming rooms have really taken off. Lots of calming rooms have been established in the places that high schools that work has had, consultation services. And just in general, I mean, I've seen articles from places all over the country really jumping on board with the value of the calming rooms in the school. And so one of our local partners, Mind Peace Cincinnati, has really stepped up to help schools establish these rooms, establish, some parameters around these rooms, to staff the rooms, to put the right types of materials and equipment in there to really make it helpful to the students. And let me tell you something else, the teachers like those rooms too. Because we all need times in our day when we would love to feel calmer and get calmer. So,
Melissa, I have to share with you, Deer Park, after they put in a calming room for their students, a few years later, they put in a calming room for their faculty.
yes.
I mean, so there is a perfect example. But I'll tell you, the Mind Peace organization, I worked with Elena Carnival at Western Hills University High School and Cincinnati Public Schools, and we put together a wonderful calming space, and it's just really beautiful because that's a big school, 7 through 12, and they really identified the space, worked on it. It's beautiful. It's staffed by their counselors and their helpers, and so I can't stress enough that that is a specific strategy that you could really use. And there's no better organization than Mind Peace with Susan Shelton and Elena putting those things together for our community. There again, little theme. None of us is, oh, let me think of it. What's the last line? Hello. So please continue.
Yeah, I saw pictures of that room at Western Hills. It's beautiful and amazing. So, some other outcomes that we want to point to are that the PBS teams at the schools are focused on data to create their baselines, and it's important to note that during the pandemic, lots of baselines shifted because we were under extraordinary circumstances. And so as you're creating baselines and creating tiers of intervention and support, you're going to want to make sure you're starting from the place where you are as the data point and not from the place you used to be.
That's good.
The other great outcome of teachers and schools participating in these social and emotional modules is that teachers are reaching out more to parents, to team members, and to counselors. So when you see people come together and work as a team, none of us is as smart as all of us, they feel more supported, less stressed. And we know that having positive social supports is great for what? Resilience. And that's not just for children, it's for adults too. And so the more that we see people working together in a supportive fashion to support all the pieces that need to come together, help our children in the schools, the better off everybody is. And they're just happier too. And that's great to see.
And I would want to comment about that as well. When Shauna Murphy was the principal of Woodward Career Technical High School, Cincinnati Public School, they sent a team out into the community. And for the seventh graders coming in, they visited almost every parent. And they came in and they gave them the student manual and they said, well, your child is coming now to Woodward Career Technical High School, and they're going to have to choose a career later on in the program. But we want you to know that this is who we are and this is what we do. What goals do you have for your child to learn this year? I mean, talk about changing the whole emphasis from, what did school say today? Getting that call from the parent. We've all received those calls. We've been on the receiving end, if you have kids, of those calls. And I can't stress upon you enough the powerful partnerships that Dr. Karen Matt did from Harvard. And it just reinforces the whole idea of working with your parents and community to help create those community. Because once they own this, it's theirs. Remember the stages of the concern. You make it your own, you refocus. So as we conclude our workshop today and leave it open to questions soon, Melissa and I would like to read one of our favorite poems to you, because we hope that this is true for you today as an active participant in this workshop. And we do thank you as well for being part of this conference session. Okay, so we begin with Portia Nelson's autobiography in 5 short chapters. Chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find a way out.
Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I've fallen again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. And it still takes a long time to get out.
That would be called denial, not the river in Egypt.
Yes.
Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. Oh, I see it's there. Oh my goodness, I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately.
Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it.
Ta-da! That is awakening. But the best part of all is chapter 5, where I walk down another street. And Melissa and I hope and pray that this workshop, or some of the information that you have gleaned from this workshop, will help you walk down another street. If you walk away from this workshop knowing that every behavior that your students have in class is an expression of a need, whether it's emotional or a control issue or whatever, whatever it is, none of us are is, smart as all of us, whatever it is, remember that it's all about you. And we can't honor you enough for being the dedicated people that you are. And we pray that your next school year, bringing more trauma informed care and reaching out to these resources and the Tri State Trauma Network, that's a wonderful organization. Please, please take care of yourself and have a rest of a good break this summer. And we will be opening up soon for questions and answers, right, Melissa?
Yes, we'll have time for questions and answers, and this is our contact information. And in the interest of time, we're gonna move on and stop the presentation to do some live question and answer with you. Thank you so much for being here.